You're between two dumbbells. I'm your host, Skip Hill, and I'm bringing over 40 years of bodybuilding experience to the table, including over 24 years of online coaching. I'm joined today by my co-host, Dr. Marv, aka the Educated Meathead. For each show, we posit a thought about a training exercise or training methodology, and then we deep dive into the minutia. We might argue and debate, or we might agree and tell each other how smart we both are. At the end of the discussion, we both decide if we smash or pass the topic of the day. Of course, we'll also be doing another segment of Intimate Time with Dr. Marv and Skip. And then we'll finish, as always, with a few listener questions, which are typically, though not always, related to a past show. Remember, every time you comment on the show on YouTube, you'll be included in a drawing at the end of each month to receive a Team Skip t-shirt of your choosing from the teamskip.com store. And you'll receive Dr. Marv's online bodybuilding anatomy course as well. The more times you respond, the better your chances of winning. We'll post the winner for the month on my Instagram, IG account, which is essentially the same thing, @IntenseMuscle. And we'll also reach out to the winner via their YouTube account. I want to add the next month, I'll be sweetening the pot and adding a $150 shopping spree for the EliteFTS.com store. So look for that. Dr. Marv, today I posit that a direct trap work, AKA, I call them I don't knows. I know a thing or two about training, but I built a reputation in the bodybuilding industry for removing skin. If you have too much skin, call me. Remember, skin is overrated. Everybody else calls them shrugs. I don't know. I guess you could call them that. I don't know. Maybe not, I don't know, but I don't know. The direct track work is not necessarily beneficial. I'd argue that it's typically a waste of time.
Okay.
So I'm curious your thoughts on this. I think there are a lot of better ways to develop thick traps than shrugs. So I'm gonna pass it off to you. What do you think? Am I nuts?
That's a lot. Yeah. So what'll be fun is looking at what the research shows. And then also it's going to be a perfect example of highlighting what these awesome subjects look like and why are we arguing for that. And then we will talk about anecdote, because I will just say I did a lot of shrugs when I was younger. I also did a lot of farmer carries, and I probably have not done a shrug in 10 years.
Yeah, I might even have you more years than that. I'm right there on the same page. Used to do them religiously. Why? Because when I was a teenager, it was that exercise that you could pile plates on.
100%.
It would make noise.
Yep.
So,
but I will show different exercises based on the research that I don't think are a waste of time, or it's just interesting from research. Now, some of it's like rehab based, right? So it's interesting to know, but I think it's important to show what does the research say, and then the anecdotal side of what you and I both have kind of gravitated towards.
Fair enough. Let me ask you this, though, first to start out.
Yes.
Can we both agree, though, before any of the viewers or any of the listeners go, oh, no, Skip saying that trap development doesn't matter? I think we can both agree that well-developed traps are the cornerstone or the foundation of, I don't want to say a posterior chain, but of your back, from the back, from a physique standpoint, from a bodybuilding standpoint. I think it's crucial. My thing is that the up-down exercises, I think, are highly overrated. And I think there are other exercises like barbell rows, like T-bar rows, kind of and we'll get into it, and a kind of not just an upward movement, but an up and back, backwards type of movement or range of motion is far superior and will develop much better overall trap development. So it's still important. It's from a visual standpoint, it's arguably the center stone of your back. It's going to take up the most space. It's arguably the biggest muscle in your upper back as far as just sheer size.
Like when somebody says traps, what pops in my head, Dorian Yates, that famous picture on the backside where his traps are just like 3 freaking feet off his back. Like what? Like, yeah, you say Dorian, I think of his traps first.
Well, and I think some people may think, okay, wow, look at all the surface area in a lat spread. But there's also, when the shoulder blades are retracted, that massive, thick mound of mass that just makes you look like a hunchback.
When somebody has big traps, I know I don't want to get in a tuffle with them because they're strong as hell. When it's like big forearms and big traps, you've got some strength behind you.
Agreed. I don't know if you, just real quick, but I know when I was younger, and when I say young, like 8, 9, 7, that sort of.
Okay.
I used to remember if someone, like a guy would grab a hold of you, you just like that grip, it always made like, I can't go anywhere.
Yep.
So, and I used to do that to my kids. I wouldn't have to be mean, but I would always make it a point to subtly just, I've got a grip on your arm. I'm not struggling. I don't have veins popping out of my forehead or anything else, but I wanted them to go, oh shit, if I wanted to go anywhere, if I wanted to fight this right now, I'm not going to be able to move. I'm not going to win this battle. So I'm with you. We're on the same page.
There we go. So we have, it's this huge diamond shaped muscle, and there are 3 distinct different parts of it. You have your upward traps, right? That is responsible for, it's called scapular elevation, i.e. shrugging up, and upward rotation of the trap. And I'm sure listeners are sick of me talking about upward rotation, but it is so important for healthy shoulders. So here's the front of the shoulder blade. You have these hooks, right? So what the trap does, the upper trap and the lower trap, it takes this part of the shoulder blade and it rotates it upward. And that is really, really important for shoulder health, and especially getting in an overhead position. Okay. Now, so spoiler alert, shrugs will hit that, but so do heavy hinging, rows, deadlifts, carries. I think carries should be used more in bodybuilding than they are. I think that's a great movement. So we can talk about that, but that's the upper trap. Then you have the middle trap, right? All of your rows are hitting this, so long as you're getting like full shoulder protraction, retraction. Its main job is called shoulder or scapular retraction, which is pinching your shoulder blades together. And then you have your lower traps. That is responsible for the opposite of the upper. So the lower depresses the shoulder blade, aka scapula, so it brings it down, but it still upwardly rotates. And a notable muscle is this guy called your levator scapula. It's kind of like the teres to your lat, to where the levator is the helper of the trap. And the issue when we dive into the research is how most people do their shrugs. They're getting a lot of levator, not as much trap as they would think. In my office, especially with desk jockeys or people with chronic neck pain or poor breathing mechanics, I dry needle this muscle probably 5 to 10 times a day. Not even kidding.
Oh, wow.
Yep. Or I should say some sort of treatment. I'm treating this at least 5 times a day, every single day I go into my office. It is super common, and it's really important for shoulder blades. So just biomechanically, you see how it attaches to the corner of the shoulder blade. So if this is getting overly recruited or it's not doing its job or whatever, well, one, it's attached to the shoulder blade, so it's going to make it harder for your shoulder blade to go out wide, aka protraction or training in the gym, right? Getting a big stretch. 2, like we've talked about before, your rib cage is very malleable, meaning it'll change shape based on breathing mechanics, muscle tension, blah, blah, blah. When this guy gets trigger pointy and short and tight, it'll start to compress your upper back ribs, which we've shown on here will make shoulder blade motion even harder. So 1 + 1 = 3. So if this guy is overworked or trying to kick in for your traps, or you're using it too much with faulty breathing mechanics, not only could you most likely end up getting neck pain, neck stiffness, headaches, because its job is every time you side bend, it's working. And the big thing is every time you elevate your shoulder, like we talked about, it's working. It's not if you have issues, it's when. So shoulder blade health, rib cage mechanics, neck pain, neck headaches, it's really, really important. Okay. And then going back though, it works with your trap. So it does that. Here is shoulder blade retraction, right? It's supposed to be highlighting the middle. So I think people know the motions we talked about, that we did that. So I will get out of here.
Can that levator, if you have issues like the clients that you're seeing that you treat that muscle so frequently, can that keep your scapula from protracting
Yes,
maximally.
100%. Yep, that's what I said. That's what I started with. Is by definition, if it's there, one, how are you get? So if I'm glad I didn't stop sharing my screen. Yeah, if this is chronically tight, how the hell are we going to lengthen this so the upward side goes up, and then how are you going to push it out wide?
And it can also, correct me if I'm wrong, create scalene shoulder.
Correct. Yep. Okay. So what happens is this and your scalenes, man, Skip, what are you trying to do my job?
Well, I was going with scaling being one higher than the other. So if you do a lat spread and one shoulder is higher than the other, then you want to take a closer look at a potential levator imbalance. Correct?
100%.
Okay.
Yep. So let's talk breathing and then we'll talk posing. So actually this is awesome. I didn't even think about this. So your scalenes are here. The nerves that go into your arm go through these, and your levator. Those are called accessory muscles when it comes to breathing, which means you should only be using those when you are literally winded and gasped for air in the gym, or you're doing, interval cardio, whatever. They should not help us breathe day in and day out. So people will do something called paradoxical breathing, where they're breathing through, I'm going to stop the screen share. They're breathing through their shoulders all day. This should only happen if you are dying for air in the gym or you're doing heavy cardio. So if you're constantly doing this, people get stressed out. We don't want to push our belly out when we breathe. Your scalenes and that levator are going to start chronically tightening, creating the issues we just mentioned. From a posing standpoint, when we have issues with the levator, not always, but I've done this long enough where I could say we're probably going to find some other things. So say somebody's posing with a high shoulder on the left, which actually a good friend sent me his check-ins. He's competing this weekend. I don't do anything before that close to a show, but as soon as the show's over, we're putting together his mobility thing for him posing. But say your left shoulder's tighter, I guarantee you're going to find on that same side, your subscap and your teres and your lat is all sorts of bound up, because this and that's going to be opposing. And then 9 times out of 10, they cannot fully protract the shoulder like we talked about in a lat spread. Part of it is because everything's tight and spastic. And just anecdotal, I don't know if there's been any research on it, but I will say if somebody's got a high shoulder on one side, man, they have a hard time controlling the serratus anterior and the shoulder overall. So usually if you have a high left shoulder, yes, you've got tightness here and most likely in your trap, right? They kind of, I'm separating, but they go together. And then you're going to have stuff locked up in your armpit. And then you're going to have a hard time using this muscle to fire that, because we're going a little head. The only 2 muscles, your upper and lower traps and your serratus. Okay. I'm going to quit screen sharing. So those are the only 2 muscles that take those shoulder blade hooks and upwardly rotate. Those are the only 2 that do it. So they are directly tied together and they're super important. And people don't typically focus on upward rotation of the scapula. We're typically focused on back and down, back and down, back and down, right? So that's an issue. So that's how getting everything to do their job, getting stuff released, making sure you're doing proper breathing mechanics throughout the day when you're training. That's not only going to help your training, it's going to help your posing and prevent further issues. So it's like massively important.
Well, and I think people need to understand that if you have some type of tightness, and we're talking about the back today through the upper shoulders and the traps, but it doesn't matter what it is. It could be, your hip flexors, your piriformis. There's not one muscle that is responsible for things being out of balance. And the longer you have an issue in one area, it becomes essentially systemic. It's going to be this cascade of the longer you leave it, or the longer you have that issue, it's going to get into these other areas and these other muscles, and it's going to start to throw everything out of whack. So if you have an issue and you put it off, essentially you're creating what could be a giant shitstorm.
Yeah, everybody wants to simplify it and blame it on one muscle.
Yeah.
In my day job, it was the TVA, then it was the piriformis.
Yep.
Then it was the lower trap. Then it became the tib anterior for some known reason.
Psoas, I've heard psoas too. Oh, it's only the psoas.
It's never one. Like,
right.
Let's be logical about it. When one side of a joint lengthens, the other side has to shorten. and vice versa. So it can never be one thing only. And I even tell patients in the office, look, I am grossly simplifying this because otherwise nobody wants to hear me talk about how your main issue is, 2 main culprits and 7 tertiary and whatever the word would be, right? So I go, this is the main issue. If you want to know more, I'll tell you, but let's actually treat. Otherwise, I'll be talking the whole time.
Right.
But it's massively important. So luckily for us, we've got some studies about different position movements for traps, as well as even just changing your arm path for shrugs if you want to do it. I will say again, yes, most people, I don't think they do a ton of shrugs. Your training will dictate that. Look at your average female CrossFitter compared to your average female gym goer. CrossFit with all the explosive upright movements, they're not doing direct shrugs, folks, but you could literally see what's developed on them. Same with our ring dip gymnast guys. They don't lift weights. They are yoked and they have massive traps. Their upper bodies are damn, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they don't do a single bit of resistance training. So that's important. So we're going to put these up on the screen. I sent them to you earlier. So in this study, they figured out which had the highest EMG of the upper traps, the middle trap, and the lower traps. So they went over 10 exercises. I'm just going to give the winner for each. They did electrodes over the parts of the trap and the serratus anterior. And again, I'm going to say it till I'm blue in the face. Serratus and trap, lower and upper, the only ones that upwardly rotate. And you need that as a bodybuilder. You need that overall for shoulder health. But if you want to be getting the most out of your training and posing, learn how to upwardly rotate your traps. So the unilateral shrug was the best for the upper, according to this study. And I'm going to give some caveats with another study. For the middle, it was on the screen now where they're lying face down. They are externally rotated and they're doing essentially like a loaded T. And then the lower trap was the prone overhead raise, i.e. a Y raise that we mentioned in the shoulder thing. And I actually was excited. 2 people specifically said, oh, Y raises, I do them all the time. They're awesome. Okay. And guess what? The prone overhead raise, which is essentially a Y raise, was the second most recruiting one for the middle trap. So big bang for your buck. And it's training upward scapular rotation. Like we talked about, it's getting all 3 heads of the delt involved, right? Yes, middle's the primary mover. Refer back to the previous week's episode if you're not sure what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. But there's that study. Okay?
Let me ask you real quick.
Mm-hmm.
I'm surprised when you said that the middle trap or the EMG results showed the most activation or the most activity for the middle trap with a team movement. Let me ask you this. Why would there be more recruitment there than just a shrug movement?
Mm-hmm. So they're lying face down and they're externally rotated. So it's lining up to fully retract. Because remember, the middle trap's job is just pure shoulder blade motion into the spine.
Then why you're able to get arm? Why move the limb through that full range of motion when you could keep the same shoulder position and only shrug through the shoulder blade?
We're about to get to that.
Okay, I'm sorry, my head.
So in this study, now I read the full study. There's pictures on it, but I read a lot of studies. So they did 10 different movements. I don't remember all of them off the top of the head. Maybe they did the Kelso shrug, but I have another paper specifically because I think Kelso shrugs, and I think you would agree with me, super underrated, don't get done enough.
Agreed.
So
there are exceptions to my shrug rule.
Correct. Yep. But we're talking traditional. Now, let's say though, you really like shrugs. According to research, there's a better way to do it, but it also points out what people are arguing over. So I am not throwing shade at this subject. It is awesome that he's doing this research to move everything forward, but this is pretty much what is being considered a well-trained male in research, as you can see on the screen. It is what it is. It's not a large human being. So it is what it is. So they did 3 different types of shrugs with arm and neck positioning. So the first one was they called preferred, was they were essentially allowed to naturally self-select the arm movement, arms in front of themselves, how most people do, shoulders about 30 degrees abduction. Guess what? That had the worst levator to trap recruitment ratio and the worst upper trap ratio, which is what most people do. Performance chiropractic and sports medicine in the Houston Bay Area, telemedicine and nutrition coaching all over Texas. And if you're not in Texas, don't worry. You still do consults through the educatedmeathead.com, where you also find workout programs, seminar recordings, and online courses. Then they did something called the frontal plane, where, as you can see on the screen right now, they literally put PVC pipes. So the subject was arm, I'm going to stand up, was literally by their side in the frontal plane. That had the best trap to levator ratio and the highest upper trap recruitment. And then the final one that was middle of the road was one where they literally had the examiner pushing the patient's, or the subjects, I'm used to saying patients in the office,
right,
chin back, as well as pushing their back to keep them super stacked, right? And that outperformed how most people do their shrugs, which is arms in front going straight up. So you're doing a lot of levator, which is what I said earlier, right? So it was nice that years of anecdote was shown in the study of like, yeah, it's a lot of levator if you're doing it how most people do. Now we're going to let Skip jump the gun, unless you have any questions on this. Do you have any questions, or we're good to go?
Well, so I may, but I'm holding back because I have this tendency to get ahead of everything.
Correct.
Sorry.
Yeah, I know you always steal my thunder. I mean, come on, man. So then we have two different studies about, just straight shoulder retraction in 90 degrees was the best. Most overall trap activity for all three parts. It had the best levator to trap ratio. So yes, I think any version of a Kelso shrug is awesome. We'll talk about how I like to use them as a mechanical drop set, but this, I'm going to choose this over that every day of the week, right? Why? Because you could actually load this. You're doing maybe 5 to 10, 15 pounds on a tee.
Right.
So this is rehab, maybe, and warming up. I think there's some benefit. I do body weight TYWs, which is a little bit differently because it's a good posture reset. Helps the neck. It helps lengthen everything, blah, blah, blah. But in the gym, your good old fashioned I's and T's with a light dumbbell, there's still benefit to them because you're getting everything warmed up. You're getting shoulder blade motion. You're getting friction and synovial fluid and blood and increasing oxygenation of muscle. So there's benefit. But if you only go on EMG studies, you're going to be doing a movement that you could do maybe 15, maybe 20 pounds with.
Yeah.
Versus one you could put 2, 3, 4, if you're super strong, 5 plates and be actually getting an actual noticeable stimulus.
What about shoulder rotation? Because talking about the Kelso row, I can see how a neutral grip or a slightly under grip would be more beneficial than an like an overhand grip, basically referring to external versus internal rotation. So I see that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but if I'm going to hold here versus here, if I'm rolling from this position to this position, I am externally rotating, correct?
That is correct.
I can see that the external rotation would involve more middle trap, correct? Or am I just out? I'm not on.
So in a Kelso shrug, technically in that isolated movement, because that would be more lower trap, while supination would be probably more.
But isn't it angle of pull too? I mean, here's an example.
That's why it gets complicated.
Right.
And my answer is going to be maybe, and there's a sign of an expert because I don't know for a fact off the top of my head. I would believe that.
Put it on an incline just for a visual, like at about a 70, 75 degree incline facing into the incline. I could see how the external rotation or the slight underhanded grip could be a middle trap based on the angle of pull and being more upward.
I think I would agree with that, but I don't know for a fact. So, and I'm just being transparent. So like guys could roast me in the comments.
It's just an opinion.
I'm showing what I could say factually and not. I've always done them pronated, usually because it's a mechanical drop set. I don't really do them solo ever. So I don't like doing a palms up, chest supported row. And I don't do bent over rows because of my back and shoulder anyways. Right. So yeah, that would be a maybe. That is a great thing. And I'm sure somebody could correct me in the comments. So great.
But as a viewer or a listener, play with that shoulder rotation and just see what, because ultimately at the end of the day, I've said this a million times. I'm going to say it a million more times. You're your own science experiment. So play around with those grips, play around with the rotation and see what feels best, because you may have a slightly different angle of pull than the guy next to you who might like them pronated versus supinated. So see what it feels like. Supinated
would open up more space in the shoulder. So with my shoulder issues, that might make sense. I normally do either the chest supported machine, or if I'm doing dumbbell, I don't really do chest supported barbell rows just because it's such a pain in the ass to set up.
Yeah.
And I don't train in a garage, so I don't
want
a
seal row. Good luck finding those. Yeah.
Correct. Man, that is, I wish I had access to a seal row. Those are brutal.
That's an old school. People don't know that, but
super underrated.
Yeah, super underrated.
Yeah, you do a seal row to a Kelso shrug, your traps and upper back are smoked.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's that now. And then no big surprise on the screen. Snatch grip versus regular grip upright rows, going wider, more trap involvement. We knew that. I think it was like 5 years ago. If people would literally quote, "If you don't snatch grip, are you really a bodybuilder?" Like, remember 5 years ago?
Yeah.
Every snatch grip was the big trendy thing. I don't really see anybody doing it anymore. But if you do, like we talked about with the upright row, the shoulder. So watch the shoulder episode. There's the second reason too. But yeah, the snatch grip is wider. Now, I wanted to see, is there a difference in conventional versus sumo deadlifts? That was my big question with trap recruitment. And there's not. So they're pretty similar. But it is interesting. Different parts of the range of motion will emphasize a little bit different parts of the trap. So we're only talking about trap. Okay. So the upper trap was most active near knee extension. So more towards the lockout. The middle trap was more recruited when the knee is bending. So, early as you lift or late as you descend. So as the knee straightens out, which makes sense because you're getting to that lockout, right?
Yeah.
It's upper as you're going to the bottom, it's middle. But yeah, there was no difference between sumo and conventional, which was pretty interesting. And last fun fact, and then we'll talk about what we actually do for traps. And it should be no big surprise when I say it. People are like, I kind of knew that. Your traps have one of, if not the highest concentration of androgen receptors, significantly more than your quad, right? So that's typically when people are super supplementing, they get even bigger traps because they're lifting more weight. Like we've talked about, I'm going to choose heavy loading in the trap, just doing its job for shoulder motion, stability, and health over, 10-pound tees. But if you're going down that rabbit hole, typically people's traps grow first because you have more androgen receptors there.
It's an odd thing, and I'm curious. This is just me thinking out loud how my brain works. Why are there more androgen receptors in the trapezius muscle than other muscle groups? It's an odd, and I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, it might be closer. No, but yeah, I don't know.
That's that's one that I'm gonna have to check on that.
Yeah, it's a fun fact. So, yep. But then people could be, like we've talked about, they could be a trap dominant breathing shoulder movement strategy, or it could be a lat dominant. And typically people who are trap dominant, they have really big traps. They're super overactive, chronic headaches, chronic neck pain.
And they're narrow shouldered. They have narrow clavicles. I know that's part of the reason that I got away from them, because I started thinking when I was younger, I don't have very wide shoulders, and these bigger traps are not helping this at all.
Yep.
So I got away from them, started focusing more on side laterals, and then I thought, I don't think I'm losing much here through the traps, but I'm gaining more through my shoulders, and the end result was a little bit more visually pleasing versus these high traps making your shoulders look even more narrow than they already were before.
Yeah, and I did a fun experiment. I think that's probably the reason why my elbows have so many bone chips. Um, my backyard was gravel when I was doing my private garage gym training studio, and I had lifting hooks, and I would hook, and I only weighed like 150 pounds. I would hook two 75-pound dumbbells in, and I would play an extended theme song of Bane from Batman Begins because he had big traps. That was a 13-minute set. 5 days a week, I would walk in the gravel for 13 minutes straight, and I'm hooked in so I wouldn't be able to drop it. And I did that.
Wow.
And I had really, really big traps for my size. Like, it was comically big, but I also messed up my elbow, so I don't recommend that. But I didn't do any shrug work. I wasn't deadlifting because I was too afraid about my back because I didn't know what I know now. But yeah, just even carries, they grew comically large based on my size.
Okay, then with you saying that, then I want to segue then into what do you think then as far as exercise? Because I think we're on the same page that the up-down shrugs are essentially useless or not very useful. So what exercises do you think then, if you needed bigger traps or someone came to you and said, hey, how am I want to get the biggest traps possible? What exercises do you recommend? What direction would you point them in?
Okay. So making sure you're being very diligent with your upper back focus rows, which means shoulders are wide. I mean, elbows are wide. You're getting full stretch protraction. When I do chest supported rows before my shoulder was hurt, I would recommend 2 to 4 seconds in the stretch. I'm going to give everybody a nice little bonus. You inhale first, and then you pull on a chest supported anything. There's your breathing problem because people complain breathing sucks. And then you're getting full retraction. I like a chest supported row directly into the Kelso shrug as a mechanical drop set, right? And
you're already in that position, so it's kind of an extension.
Yes.
You could even call them partials for that matter.
Correct. Yep. So I think those are really, really versatile. You could do Kelso shrugs in isolation. I typically don't, but to each their own. And then I do like snatch grip stuff if your elbows and your neck can handle that. And whether that's RDLs, deads typically aren't done, but there's that. But yeah, I'm going to say, man, your heavy hinging movements, whether it is an RDL, a deadlift, a bent over row, when you're doing even a one-arm dumbbell row, so long, because you're in that bent over position, I'm going to say I want most of my growth from those heavy hinged movements. I do think carries are very versatile. A suitcase carry, which is carrying load in one hand only, man, that is a super sneaky way of working on core, hip internal rotation, knee biomechanics, foot biomechanics. Like, start throwing in suitcase carries, either on your back day when you're doing hinging, or on your leg day as like your first exercise, final warm-up, or in between your warm-up sets. You'll notice a difference because biomechanically you've gotten a lot of stuff going, including core activation. So I think carries, but you're heavy hinging. And then so long as you're doing actual proper upper back focused row type movements, you're going to get plenty. I think I've only programmed a shrug as a pump set for like a Dr. Scott Stevenson Fortitude style training program. But I don't program direct heavy loading sets of shrugs.
I think we're on the same page because I have felt for years that barbell rows, deads, T-bar rows, plenty of trap involvement there. And again, recommending, and not only because of my own experience with myself, but just recommending in general, just to get rid of the shrug. But I would say this, I still think that a shrug lying into a high incline can have some benefit for middle trap. I'm okay with that.
And you are pulling your shoulders at an angle.
Exactly.
You're not pulling straight up. Yeah, which is, and then remember that straight up, especially if your arms are in front of you, that's going to be a lot of levator, which we don't want. I mean, it's job security for me if you lived in the Houston Bay Area and you do that. But
and for everybody else, it's just I honestly believe that it's just a giant waste of time. For that matter, you could be doing abs or cardio, and it would be more beneficial at that time. Or forearm, or tibialis, things that you just otherwise wouldn't do that you think might be a waste of time would be better spent than doing a standing traditional upright row. Or I'm sorry. Shrug.
Shrug.
I got
Correct.
the upright
Yeah,
row.
and I even used to play around with like, hanging from a squat rack and doing the shrugging and like, it felt great. And I was big on when I did do shrugs, you hold the top position for a full 2 count. You're getting a full stretch on it because the range of motion is 2 centimeters anyways. So, and then if you're going to do shrugs, please don't do this.
Yeah, thank you. Yes. Great point. Great point.
Please don't do that. So, So,
All right.
If you do proper heavy hinging and proper upper back rowing, you probably don't need to do extra. And then throw in some carries. I do think carries are vastly underutilized for a variety of reasons. And I think your traps are going to be just fine.
Agreed. That takes us then to probably, again, a very easy, predictable, anticlimactic smash or pass. Yeah, it's like, what are they going to say? I'm not real sure.
Yeah.
You take it first. We got to do it officially so that I don't forget about it.
Yeah. Hey, this is 3 in a row we've done it.
I'm knocking it out of the park now.
Yeah, that's hilarious. So I am passing on direct trap work, or I'm passing on the shrugs.
Yeah.
And especially the shrugs, how most people do them.
I'm definitely smashing on trap development. I want to be crystal clear with that. No question. From a bodybuilding, visual, impressive back standpoint, it's a definite smash. Do not forget them. But absolutely passing 100% on the vast majority of shrugs, with the one exception being that angle where you would face in, or finishing your machine rows with partials or middle back shrugs to extend the set for more trap development. But I'm not even going to bother to call those shrugs, so I'm passing on it.
Okay.
Easy pass. Easy pass.
Yep.
Good deal.
Awesome.
Sweet music of love, we can no longer.
That'll transition us then into intimate time with Skip and Dr. Marv. And I believe, unfortunately, I'm on the hot seat.
I'm on Easy Street.
Yeah,
this is
exactly.
awesome.
All right. I'm preparing myself.
Yep. All right. So if you don't know, these are 10 questions that Skip does not know about, and they cannot be related to the industry or the industries that we are in. So, and he has to answer no matter what. What is the last snack or meal that you ate in your car?
Well, I'm prepping. So, and Justin might be listening. So I have to no, I'm kidding. I think most people know that I am a machine at this point after doing this for years. The last meal, because I don't go anywhere or do anything other than the gym. I work at home. I just don't go anywhere. I probably haven't had a meal in my car for quite a while. So I'm gonna guarantee that it was not during prep. It would not have been fast food. I'm not fast food, but to pinpoint what it was, that's a difficult one. It would probably have been it would have had to have been a donut.
Okay.
But I can't because you got to figure I haven't had anything. I've been essentially in perpetual prep mode since before Thanksgiving. I mean, I literally haven't. Justin has had to force me to have a cheat meal. I mean, it's really been that tight. So yeah, but I guarantee it was a donut, a gourmet donut, probably salty donut, if I'm being honest.
Nice. I have a donut once every 7 years. Okay, if you had to live the rest of your life as a minor character from a 90s sitcom, who would it be and why?
Ooh, a 90s sitcom. Remember, I'm in 80s.
Or you know what? Let's just say whatever decade you
Okay, fair enough. That makes it easier because I'm trying to think of one from the 90s.
Yeah.
You know what? I'll play along. I'll play along because I just thought of one from the 90s. I would fit in the 90s into the Connor family for Roseanne.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I could definitely see myself in that dysfunctional family. And our family was not dysfunctional. I was literally raised by the Cleavers, Ward and June. How I came out of that, I have no idea. But anyway.
That's funny. Okay, number 3. When was the last time, or if you do, that you cried during a commercial, and what was it advertising? Do commercials get you when you're on prep?
Here's the funny thing. People aren't going to know
like
this, but I am I'm pretty emotional. Like if I watch sports or I see something that's
Yep.
tear jerking, I will. I'm emotional like that. But a commercial. I'm not trying to cop out of this, but I'm drawing a blank because of the commercial. I don't know that I've been moved by a commercial,
Okay.
but I'm very easily moved by something that is like true stories, you know, biopic things that are so movies and stuff, but I can't think of a commercial. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to get out of this one.
I am within the last 3 years because I was raised in, I'll give you something to cry about. So within the last 3 years, the floodgates have opened, and it'll be sports. I'll get teary eyed watching a huge comeback or a huge accomplishment, or like if a scrub comes off the bench and hits the game winning shot, I'll be flat out crying because I'm like, where the hell did that come from? But I understand that. Yep. Okay. Number 4, what's your personal stance on eye contact with yourself when brushing your teeth in the mirror?
That's an odd one.
Yep.
That's an odd one. Eye contact with myself. I don't know that I've ever thought about that. Yeah. I mean, I don't. Yeah,
You're
I don't.
gonna think about it from now
I
on.
am. Yeah, I'm like, do I make eye contact? I watch my teeth. I don't. That now I'm sure I'm going to when I go brush my teeth, and I'm sure that I'm going to be like, I guess I do look at myself.
Yeah.
That's
You're
an odd
welcome.
one.
You're welcome. Number 5, if your inner child had to leave a Google review of your adult life, what would it say?
My inner child.
Mm-hmm.
It would probably say that there was no indication that you would be successful. You were supposed to be a lost child and just a loser living at home. That's the best I can come up with. Yeah.
All right. That's fair. Number 6, what's a big pet peeve of yours? And it could be anything.
In prep, there are numerous ones.
Yep.
And I'm in
Hopefully
prep,
your wife's not in the house right now.
Well, she is. She's home. Yeah. But my one, I'll be honest, and she won't hear this because she's got her headphones on in the room watching a movie. But she has been around me prepping for so long that she gives me my space. She understands. She doesn't do the, oh my God, you don't love me. You're not paying attention to me. She just knows this game and is cool as fuck about it. And I had to tell her the other day, thank you for being so supportive and allowing me my room to do my thing and stay, you know, in my headspace that I need to stay in. But I don't like repeating myself. And sometimes I'll bust her because I'll say something and she'll go, huh? And I'll wait and she'll answer me. And then I go, ha, you fucking heard me. So all I did was I waited until it's like she goes, well, I have to process it. Well, process it then. I don't want to have to say it again. And when you're in prep, you just sometimes don't have the energy or the patience. So those are those little things. And you know what? In fairness, her pet peeve is probably because I am shorter. I don't have, in my older age too, I don't have the patience. I feel like I have arrived at a time in my life where I shouldn't have to wait on anything anymore. I know that's bad, but that's just me being transparent.
Yeah. If you could erase one phrase from modern language forever, what would it be?
Literally.
Sweet. Do you believe in a conspiracy theory?
No. I'm not saying there aren't. I'm not saying that there are, that, you know, I trust the government and I trust. All I'm saying is there are too many people who overthink things to the point where the guy working the cash register at the Circle K thinks he's smarter and he has figured something out for no other reason than his life is so unmotivated that he has nothing else to focus on. And I don't like that. I don't like the intellectual thought, or the thought that intellectually you're advanced and you're so much further along than everybody else, and everybody else just doesn't get it because they're not paying attention. I don't like that.
Fair. This is a good one. Number 9. If your personality had a scent, what would it be called? And the example is Sex Panther. Do you not know what that's from? Oh,
No.
my heart's breaking. Oh, my heart is breaking.
No.
All right, we're gonna have Chris throw it up on the screen.
Okay, fair enough.
It's from Anchorman.
Oh no, you know what? I was never I hate to say it. I know.
man.
I'm sorry. It
Oh.
never resonated with me.
I have a
love
Ron
Will
Burgundy
Ferrell.
suit. All right, so you're gonna
Love
see
him.
my Ron Burgundy suit.
Love him, but no, it's kind of like Office. I don't like
Okay.
that type of. And I'm a dry humor guy. I just sometimes it doesn't resonate with me. Yeah, I sent. You know, the only thing that comes to mind really is I am a sucker for, because I was raised in Michigan, for lilacs. That's the only thing, and it's not related to anything. It's related to my childhood. And then I found out years and years later that lilacs only bloom 2 weeks out of the year, but our house was surrounded by them. So in my brain, my entire childhood at my house, all I ever smelled was lilacs.
Yeah.
So it's just ingrained in me. It's just something that's very nostalgic to me when I sentimental when I smell that.
So what would the cologne of lilac smell be called?
Probably my youth. I mean, I don't know, something related to my youth. I don't know.
Yeah. All right.
Wanting to go back.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yep. Okay. So you're not going to like my little caveat to this question. If you had to choose a song to play every time you entered into a room for the rest of your life, but it can't be a banger, which means Till I Collapse is no longer an option.
You knew I was going to go there.
Pick? Yep.
Every time I enter a room,
Mm-hmm.
then I'm going to have to go with LL Cool J, Don't Call It a Comeback.
All right.
Only because it's the first thing that came to, came to mind.
Yep. Okay. Nice. And you are off.
They're
The
getting
hot seat.
easier. I think we're getting more comfortable,
Yeah.
or I am. So maybe they're a little bit more fun now than they were before.
Yep.
Fair enough. That will take us into the questions from the comments. You have, I think you have the first one, right?
Yep. So this is from Nicola Ricks 438. She said,
She's my BFF for the record.
nice. Awesome.
Yeah.
So would a female versus training styles, should they be different? Yes or no, and why? Like, would DC be protective for females as opposed to higher volume? Are there exercises females would gain more from because of structural, androgenic receptor, fiber type disposal, or biomechanical differences? And I like her very clear thought process of even muscle fiber type distribution and all that. And I have a good amount of research we could quickly go over.
Fair enough.
But
I want to go to you
I
first.
talked a ton. Okay. All right. I talked a ton.
Because we might disagree on this one a little bit.
Yeah. So, and then I have anecdotal experience because at one point my entire training thing was middle-aged women or pregnant women, and then senior citizens in the retirement home. It was weird how my training career ended, but that was pretty
Maybe
much
that's why it ended
too.
there, Marv.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I'm kidding.
So, so overall, the short answer is there's no difference to train differently, right?
Okay,
So
good.
now, and there's multiple meta-analysis and systematic reviews backing up what I just said.
Okay.
Real quickly, quick tangent. There is a pyramid of evidence. At the top is meta-analysis, then systematic reviews, then randomized controlled trials. So when you're looking at data, something that is a systematic review or meta-analysis is talking about other studies, not just one. Usually they are better. So you want high evidence. So that is the high evidence. Now, because it's a female versus a male, females might want to change exercise selection, right? So a lot of females don't want massive adductors. So you're probably not going to find a female doing a ton of direct adductor work unless they're a wellness, individual. But like usually there's that, but you don't need to do that. Now, fiber type distribution and relative growth. So we know across the board, men and women have similar type 1 and type 2 muscle fibers, resulting in a relatively same growth rate. Now, men are going to have greater type 2 area. We're going to have overall more muscle mass. But if you look at the relative growth rates to what we're starting with, it's about the same. usually people go, yeah, males have more upper body hypertrophy due to baseline differences. But one study said that females could develop more upper body strength relative to their starting spot. And maybe a male's type 1 receptor might grow slightly more, but relative growth is the same. So once again, I don't think you need to change. The American College of Sports Medicine, and I'm going to read this verbatim, recommends similar resistance protocols for both sexes, emphasizing progressive overload, moderate to high volume, and appropriate intensity, typically 6 to 15 reps per set with 4 or more weekly sets per muscle group. And that's just the average person, right? So it is important, though. Guidelines say that. Now, menstrual cycle is the big question. And what's cool is they're actually going to start doing research on, does the menstrual cycle tie to ACL tears? Because we know ACL tears happen more frequently in women for a variety of reasons. So I'm actually very excited to see what the research says. So you could find papers saying, yes, the menstrual cycle matters, but they're papers. They're not meta-analysis or systematic reviews. So the argument is that you have 2 phases, follicular and luteal, that the phase where you have high estrogen, low progesterone is going to be a lot better for endurance in particular and muscle building, while the other phase, the luteal phase, is not so much. That was a paper. But if you look at high level, top of the pyramid systematic reviews, it typically says no. But the caveat is even those will say, hey, and I'm quoting one verbatim, this finding of there not being a difference should be interpreted with caution due to the methodological, good God, can't talk, methodological shortcomings identified by the quality assessment, meaning there's a lot of shortcomings in these studies, but the research across, usually for meta-analysis and systematic review, says it doesn't matter. One last thing before I talk about anecdote and what I've done is, well, what about contraceptive use? Now, this is arguably more Victoria Felkar, you're
just playing
area
it
of
safe.
expertise.
You're playing it safe. I don't blame you. I've had to do the same
correct.
thing. Yeah.
But usually some studies will notice minor fluctuations in strength and power. They're inconsistent and you can't say they're statistically, important. Now that's getting a little bit out of the scope of our show, but one review found pretty much no differences in short-term resistance training responses across menstrual cycles, regardless if they're on the pill or not. So again, and this one said, overall, the review highlights that while female hormones may affect resistance training responses, current evidence is inconsistent and further research is needed to clarify this. Another one did even neuromuscular fatigue or preserved exertion. They didn't really see a difference versus, natural menses versus still on the pill. So again, getting a little bit out of the scope of it, but it doesn't appear that it doesn't require you to change your training. And I will say anecdotally, women can typically handle more volume, probably because loads are a little bit lower. Women are actually, my female clients are actually way more hardcore than my male clients. They typically ask way fewer questions and execute the plan better. Changing your training based on your cycle is the exception, not the rule. I've had maybe 2 for sure stick out where we literally had to change their training. 2. And I was a trainer for over a decade. So how many thousands? That's the exception, not the rule. And psychology, right? Well, if people think they're going to be weaker, they're going to be weaker. Here's the test I want everybody to do. So you're going to load up whatever you're going to do for your work set, your top set, your progressive overload. Okay. There is a huge difference in performance if you say, I need to hit 10 reps and it's around your 10 rep max versus if you say, I'm hitting 15 reps or I'm going home. You're going to hit more reps if you go in with the 15 rep mentality than the 10 rep mentality. So if you think you're going to be weaker, you're going to be weaker. Same on prep, right? Oh, I'm in prep, I'm going to be weaker. I'm like, you're like 2 weeks in, like nothing has happened. Right. So mentality matters. And if you are the exception, it is what it is, but don't let anybody get in your head and tell you there's this big difference because the research is pretty clear that there most likely is not, but we need to do more research.
We're on the same page. I didn't know that we would be. I thought that you
Okay.
may think that there was a difference. And I mean, I don't know that I have anything to add to what you
Okay.
said,
Yeah.
other than the only difference between the male and female is the ratio of estrogen to testosterone, basically.
Mhm.
That can alter, obviously, how much muscle you're going to put on. And it also plays into how you carry body fat. It is pretty clear that females tend to carry more body fat in the lower body, in the hips, than males who tend to carry it above the waist and in their abdomen.
Mhm.
And here's the thing, and I got to be careful with how I say this to be politically correct, and to be sensitive, and you know, with the times, that sort of thing. I don't want to offend anybody. But when you have females who have a hormone profile that is naturally more testosterone dominant,
Mhm.
you will find that 99% of the time that those women do not carry body fat and muscle mass the way that a arguably, and this isn't very politically correct, but it'll make my point, more feminine, you know,
Mhm.
woman would carry muscle mass and body fat. It's the same situation when you flip flop that to males too. So if you have a very, very estrogen dominant male, they do tend to be and carry body fat in the lower body. They're not as muscular. This is all hormones, but it doesn't change the effectiveness of the training. I agree with you 100%. And I think that's why you see females with performance enhancement use who will get very muscular over time, and they will get very lean over time as well. You take a natural female who's more estrogen dominant, good luck getting their lower body and their glutes really, really lean if they want to compete. And sometimes it takes a very long time. Here's one more caveat that's important. Males, as they age, will carry body fat vastly, or store body fat completely different than when they were younger. And I did not believe this when I was younger. I thought it was an excuse used by the older demographic until I started aging. And it is crystal clear that the older a competitor gets, the more body fat they're going to carry on their posterior chain than their front. That's number one. And two, as we age as males, we tend to carry more body fat in the hips, in the glutes, than we did when we were younger, even when you're using performance enhancing compounds as well. There is clearly a hormone connection when it comes to body fat and with, you know, with muscle mass. But outside of that, the training itself is essentially the same.
Yeah, and remember there was that big controversy where it was a female runner who was accused of being on super supplementation. She just had crazy naturally high levels, and I believe she was even banned from competing, even though it wasn't her fault. It was, you know, the natural stuff.
But that's our society too. That's a different rabbit hole.
Yeah, correct.
Where we just naturally assume, well, that freak over there has to be doing this because she can't fall within the parameters of natural. And that's just, there are those outliers, and we have them in our sport, and we, you know, accuse them of taking massive amounts of performance enhancing drugs, when a lot of times those genetic and gifted physiques don't even have to go anywhere near what the rest of us mere mortals do.
Yep.
So we're a very, very judgy society,
Yes.
very, very judgy. Point the finger, you know, well, it's resentment. There's a lot of resentment there too, but that's a rabbit hole to go down later.
Correct. Yep. But yeah, moral of the story is probably not, but everybody's a unique individual.
Sure.
Just don't let get in your head. And usually the stuff marketed towards females and anything is more expensive and fear mongering, i.e. the same supplement, you put a pink label on it.
Right.
I could reduce the concentration to up my margins, but I could charge more. So anyways, okay. And then last question, and don't forget, you're doing these questions, you're going to be entered in the drawing. This was from, I'm going to do my best. Tybo XV5DP. Question for the next podcast. When is enough enough? I have found that 4 sets of everything I'm doing is working so well for me right now, but I can't complete a full workout due to time constraints. 2 hours is my max. That's a pretty good chunk of time. So he says 2 hours is my max, especially with 30 minutes of cardio 7 days a week. If you are finding what's working but can't finish a complete workout, what's next? I will let you lead this since I have talked way too much, and then I will chime in when you're done.
Okay, the end of the question is if you can't complete a workout.
So it started as when is enough? He's doing 4 sets of everything and it's working well. He can't complete his full workout. But then he goes, if you're finding it's working, but he can't finish his complete workout that he wants to do, what's next?
Okay. Unfortunately, I missed that last part originally, and that's kind of an important part.
Yeah.
Because when enough is enough, my opinion is so many people go after the pump.
Okay.
Now, I'm not saying that it's not a bad general guideline. The thing is I would rather, and I've learned this over the years due to experience, if I just chase the pump, most of us, including myself, will end up doing too much work because we're going to milk it. And here's the thing with the pump too is you could do your regular workout and you could have a pretty good pump, but you could throw in an extra exercise at the end that you haven't done in a long time. Let's say you haven't done pullovers for back in a long time, but you add them to your back workout. Trust me, you're going to get a pretty good pump from that exercise, whether you need that exercise or that added work or not, because you just haven't done it in a while. So I don't like to use the pump as the guideline. I like to use contractile force. I think it is far more accurate. And if you don't know what I'm talking about and you're listening and you go, oh, what does that mean? You don't have the time in the gym or the experience to be able to understand what that means. Essentially what it is this. When you start to lose the ability to forcefully contract that muscle during a set, that's where every set after that becomes incredibly less effective. So any more work you're doing past that is becoming less and less beneficial, to the point where I would argue that you're starting to dig a little bit of a hole. And like Dr. Scott Stevenson says, and I like this analogy, you don't want to dig a hole that you can't fill back up with dirt. So you don't, otherwise what happens is you end up, someone has to hand you a ladder to be able to get out of the hole. It's just too much work. So when you start to lose the contractile force, you're starting to lose the efficiency, and your training is becoming less and less optimal after that. I would focus on each muscle group as far as how much muscular contraction or how much contractile force you're losing, and err on the side of less, and then you can always add more later. If you err on the side of a little bit more, like most of us do, more everything, more cardio, more dieting, more training, more protein, we are in excess industry with excess thoughts, I guess. Our thoughts, we want to do more. Do less. You can always add the next week or the next workout. But if you go overboard, then you realize, okay, I have to pull back. You're already in a hole. So arguably you'd have to pull back significantly more or even deload to get back to the point where you were. It's easier and far more optimal to add versus to pull back. Now, I didn't give a black and white answer to Ty. I understand that because his situation is not so black and white to me, and I don't have the details of his specific situation to know, okay, you need to do this amount of sets, and because I don't know how hard you train, Ty. I don't know how frequently. I don't know what your sleep looks like. I don't know if your life is stressful. I don't know all those details. And those are the things that we have to deal with our individual science experiment and be able to analyze that feedback and make those adjustments.
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of minimum effective dose. It's what I preach in office. So I know. Yes, you need to know where the line is. You've got to cross it. I get that, but within reason. And the pump thing, I do a blend of my mind to muscle connection and pump. Also, though, the pump could be different because not everybody's as anal OCD as you and I, to where I will not work out if I didn't have my half a teaspoon of salt, my quarter teaspoon of potassium, my 8 ounces of orange juice. I've gotten in, 60 ounces of fluids before I train. Like, that's going to be way different too. Also, there's no excuse to not have a pump unless you're like 2 weeks out. Because you could have had no food. If you get fluids and electrolytes, especially sodium in, you're going to have a pump. So if you're not having a pump, you need to look at the other stuff. And yeah, I think, because I used to be the pump with you, like what most people did. And as I got better, I was like, well, I could just feel when I don't have the same control of the muscle, I'm done. And I fall off a cliff where I'm great and then I'm not.
Yeah.
And then also, because of what I do, I can't overdo it. And I know I pride myself on training really hard. I still think I train pretty hard considering how hurt I am right now. Yes, but I'm not doing 275 for 53 reps as a Widowmaker and then going back to the office to treat people. Those days are over, right? Yeah. So there's that. Now, for Ty, it sounds like it's working. So we always want what's more, what's best. That's good because it is a growth mindset. But if it's working, don't fix what ain't broke. You said it's working great. So who cares if you're not finishing your workout? And you're going to have different cycles of your life when you could devote more time. You could devote less time. I want us to do a topic of what happens if you only have 30 minutes to work out. Do you say no, or do you get something in? Because there's going to be times where you're not going to have 2 hours. I think the average person does not have 2 hours to get training in. So 2 hours is a long time, even with 35 minutes of cardio, even with 5 minutes of warming up. Let's say you have an hour and 20 to lift. Maybe reduce your rest times. Maybe start supersetting. Maybe do a cluster set versus 5 working sets. Like, you have ways to tweak it. But if it sounds like it's working, don't fix what ain't broke. But I get it. We all want to know, what if I'm missing gains on the table? But if you're seeing progress, you're seeing progress.
Right. 100%. On that note, I think I'm going to take us out.
Good.
We got to get to getting. This is Skip and Dr. Marv splitting. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to like, subscribe, share, and ring the bell. It should sound a little something like this. And if you didn't like the show, just pretend you did. Like, subscribe, share, and ring the bell anyway. We want to hear your questions, feedback, and any ideas you have about future topics in the YouTube comment section. If your question or topic is chosen for the show, you'll go into a separate drawing, and we will randomly choose one winner at the end of each month who will receive a 5-pound bag of Team Skip protein from TrueNutrition.com. Be sure to use the TrueNutrition.com link in the closing credits to save 10% on not just Team Skip protein, but every supplement they sell. Not only do I use my Team Skip protein with my clients, but other top prep guys have their clients use my protein because it's that good. Dr. Marv, how could someone reach out to you if they have questions or if they want to work with you?
Most active on Instagram at dr.marvin.saysdc. My chiro office is in the Houston Bay area. I do telemedicine for all of Texas, nutrition coaching all of Texas. If you're not in Texas, I could still help you out with a consultation through theeducatedmeathead.com. You'll find my online course, hopefully getting my second online course up by the end of next month. Workout programs, seminar recordings, blah, blah, blah.
If you have too much skin, I'm your guy. Go to teamskip.com. You'll find all of my contact information, including Team Skip merch. Of course, you can follow me on Instagram at Intense Muscle as well. Keep in mind that this is a team of 3, not 2. Chris is the enigma behind the scenes, and he's responsible for visuals, graphics, and he also plays a massive role in the creative process. This project would not work without him. So from all 3 of us, it's been a business doing pleasure with you. Join us again next week for another episode of Between Two Dumbbells.
Loading King Skip. Loading King Skip.